Hello, everyone. I am Kallie St Clair, otherwise known as Consciously Kallie on social media, and this is Conversations with Kallie. So, this is my podcast episode, and you're listening to the sixth episode now. And today I have the pleasure of having a conversation with my beautiful friend Stella. Just a little backstory here. Stella is a QHHT practitioner, and I will let her explain to you a little bit more about what that is. But I wanted to just talk about kind of how I found QHHT and a little bit of my backstory behind that and how I've actually found Stella. So I was actually listening to a podcast episode just like this one about quantum healing hypnosis therapy. And the name of it, for some reason, just really stood out to me. And I'll never forget, I was on a run listening to this podcast, and I just knew that it was something that I wanted to experience for myself. So as I was on a search engine looking up QHHT, there was the official QHHT practitioner website. And I am not even sure why, just Stella's name popped out of the screen at me. It was the most wild thing because I didn't see another name. Like there was no other one that even was speaking to me. It was just hers. And so I knew, like, okay, I need to get in contact with her. And from the very first conversation, I could feel her light and her energy. And so now I have had three QHHT sessions with her, and each one of them has been extremely transformational. So I'm extremely grateful to have her in my life and also to be able to have this conversation and share it with you all. So Stella, do you want to give a quick introduction of who you are and kind of how you found QHHT in your life, in your own personal story?
Yes, absolutely. So, first of all, thank you for having me here and for the amazing, wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. I've never heard you tell the story just like that. Um, yes, so I'm a level two QHHT practitioner. Um, I am currently practicing out of Texas. I recently, last year, actually relocated from St. Louis, Missouri, where I met Callie for the first time, down south to right now the Dallas Fort Worth area in Texas. Um, as far as my journey into finding QHHT, well, it was a very interesting one. I underwent a very intense process of personal awakening back in 2017, which completely changed my perception of reality, my my beliefs in life up to that point, and make me see the world around me, my own purpose in life, um, and the path forward in a completely different light. So, in the following months, since that was January 2017, um, I searched, I read, I visited spiritual retreats, I listened to spiritual teachers online, basically anything and everything that crossed my path, I soaked it up and I wanted to know more. And back then, at the beginning, I was very fascinated by the concept of. I'm going a little bit off the off the path here, but
You keep going.
I was very fascinated by the concept of astral traveling, and even attended a intense workshop on out of body experiences in astral travel, astral projections, and so on. And practiced it rigorously for several months. Really was intent on experiencing that, which I did, and I had some minor success with that, but also some quite fearful experiences. And anyhow, fast forward. At some point, just out of nowhere, one of Dolores Cannon's videos popped in my YouTube feed, and Dolores Cannon is the founder of QHHT. Back then, I didn't know anything about her. I didn't know what QHHT was, and it was a very short 8-minute video that an excerpt from a longer interview with her. And that short excerpt from her interview, in that excerpt, she talked about an experience she had in a session with a client of hers, explaining how you have to overcome, if you're feeling anger or if you're feeling any internal turmoil, you have to overcome it and you have to forgive it. Otherwise, it will create physical ailments in your body, such as the cancer that person, that client of hers, was experiencing and had come to her for healing. She was, in her video, she was basically relating the physical ailment of cancer to the emotional state of that specific client. And I thought, wow, that's an interesting concept. I've never heard it put that way before, but it really resonated with me. And I found the idea fascinating. I found this lady, Dolores, quite intriguing. She was this 85-year-old, I think at the time, lady who shined with love and light and wisdom, and I was just fascinated by her. But after I watched that video, it fell off my radar, and I didn't think about her. I still didn't know what QHHT was. Months later, this was the beginning of 2018, the same video popped into my YouTube feed again, and I remembered, and I started researching her, and I watched, it was like, what do you call it? Like I watched a whole bunch of her videos in a row, talking about all of the different concepts that she had discovered through QHHT, and explaining what QHHT was. And even I watched even some of her videos talking about like the New Earth, 5D, the 3 waves of volunteers, all these concepts that I had never heard of before. But for some reason I was like, yes, I believe this. It's exactly what my higher self resonated with that information so much. And then I heard her speak about quantum healing hypnosis technique, and I was very intrigued by it. And she was explaining how, well, she has classes that train other hypnotists and even regular people in this modality. And one thing that caught my attention was Dolores said that regular people who are not even hypnotists are much better at practicing this than even the regular hypnotists. Like that's something that really stuck with me. And I thought, wow, I really want to learn. I really want to learn this, because the way she explained it, and I can explain a little bit later what exactly QHHT is, but the way she explained it at the time in her videos and the way I understood it, it's a modality that helps you reach alternate states of consciousness, or your subconscious mind, also called your higher self, through this quantum healing hypnosis technique. And I thought, the reason I spoke about astral travel earlier, I thought, wow, why go through all this? Why try so hard to leave my body through astral travel? I have these fearful, scary experiences when I can access those parts of myself through quantum healing hypnosis. So I thought, I didn't even think about it. I looked up online right away where, when and where the next class was, and I signed up within a week. And 2 months later, I was sitting in in one of the QHHT classes, the level 1 class.
That's amazing. So it was
So
another thing that just was when you were ready, it entered into your awareness, entered into your consciousness. They're just, even through social media, can be a wonderful place, you know, just like this video, finding people, or, you know, just anything can be brought to your awareness through so many different modalities. So that's wonderful that it just came even through a simple YouTube video and going through her playlist.
yeah, and I firmly believe and also know from personal experience and from um, other people's and clients' experiences that um, things appear in your life when you're ready for them. When you're ready for the next lesson, the next gift, the next step in your personal growth, you will be sent the tools, you'll be sent the messages, you'll be sent whatever information you are needing at that point um, to go to the next level. And it's just a matter of keeping your senses, your eyes, your ears open to receive those messages that are constantly being sent to you from your spirit guides, your higher self. Um, this is,
Absolutely.
uh, one of the challenges that we as humanity have nowadays is that we live such active, busy lives that we forget to tap in to our inner voice, our intuition, our inner guidance system, which is directly connected to that eternal, all knowing part of ourselves known as our higher self or subconscious. Um, but once we become aware that that connection exists and that that part of us is there and we can tap into its infinite knowledge at any point, at any time, life becomes so much easier. You don't have to work so hard at it anymore. It you can just you can
Flow.
just manifest it.
Mm.
And yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly the experience that I had from now from my QHHT session. I mean, the difference is absolutely astronomical since my first QHHT session with you. That was, I guess, it was probably a year and a half ago now. I think it was May of 2019, somewhere in there, April or May of 2019 was my first session with you. And it truly opened up a whole new world for me because I will never forget how much more difficult that first session was, as far as being able to really listen to my intuition, being able to listen to my right brain, because we grow up in this society and this culture that really values that masculine, that left brain, that, you know, the science, the math, the intellection versus the, you know, the intuition, that, you know, not necessarily the science, but that spirit side of things, because we know that spirit is so much more ahead of science a lot of times. And so that is the most knowledgeable, that all knowing, knows what's in your best interest, knows what's good for your higher self, your higher mind. And that was something that I didn't really have a great grasp on really before QHHT and before finding this practice, which then, as you said, led to different stages, different levels kind of my awakening, where new people and new experience were brought into my life from just saying yes to one experience, saying yes to, you know, one modality that kind of opened me up.
Mhm. Yes, yes, absolutely. And maybe I should explain a bit for your viewers at this point what exactly QHHT does or how it works so that people know what exactly we're talking about. Um, so basically QHHT was like I said, it's a quantum, it's called QHHT is an abbreviation for quantum healing hypnosis technique. And it's a specific hypnosis technique developed by the late Dolores Cannon that I mentioned earlier. She started her work. She worked in this field for 45 years, and she started as a regular hypnotist. And through her work with thousands and thousands of clients, she kind of tapped into this specific technique of QHHT that opened so many more doors for her. She was, in a sense, the pioneer, the chosen one to be given access to this modality and to this knowledge that the way she describes it in her books, actually, and she's written so many wonderful books that I recommend to all of your viewers to check out. But the way she describes it is that it came to her in bits and pieces, not just the technique itself, but all the information that she channeled, not she herself channeled, but that she received through her clients' sessions, actually, piece by piece. Not to go off track here, but so she developed QHHT, which is different than the regular hypnosis technique. With it, the client is taken into a very deep, relaxed state of trance through visualization. And this is the so-called theta state of consciousness. QHHT works in that deep state of the mind that we practitioners call the theta state of consciousness. Now, the theta state is a very natural process, or a very natural state of the mind for us humans. We just don't realize it. For example, we pass through that theta state of the mind every day, twice daily, on our own, even without having to be in a hypnosis state. This is the moment when you wake up in the morning, just before you become consciously aware and awake, and also the moment at nighttime when you go to bed, and your thoughts start drifting away, and you start getting a lot of random images in your mind right before you fall asleep. You also transition from the awake state into your delta sleep state. So in the status, so what we do during a QHHT session, a quantum healing hypnosis session, is, like I said, through the process of visualization, we take the client to this deep dreamlike state in which we are able to tap into the intelligence of the subconscious mind, what I call and other practitioners call the higher self. And that subconscious mind is just below the surface of your conscious mind, or what we also call the chatter mind or the ego mind, our logical mind. In that subconscious mind, through that subconscious mind, you have access to higher planes of consciousness, to infinite intelligence, because that part of you is eternal and it's all-knowing. It has been with you. Your soul has been with you through many, many reincarnations, through many different past lives. And in a sense, when you're in a session, you can ask it any questions that you might have, or you can also ask for healing of any physical, emotional, psychological, or mental trauma, ailments, or issues that you might be dealing with. Yeah.
So we want to just walk through what a session would typically look like. So of course, I know what that looks like, but for our listeners of kind of how we start with that just initial conversation, that my favorite thing that I like to talk to when I talk about this is a lot of people are thinking like it's somebody else almost invading your own personal thoughts.
Your audio, Callie, is very distorted. I can't hear you very well.
Oh,
I,
well,
I don't know if it's your side or my side.
I'm not sure. It did this a little bit for me last time too, where it was a little bit lagging because of my internet, but hopefully it clears up. Does it get any better?
I hear you, but it's very echoey and very dragged out.
Okay, no worries. I'll go ahead and pass it to you then. So go ahead and go through what a typical session looks like. So what you start with and kind of how a session typically looks when somebody decides to take that step.
Okay, so what I heard, what I heard you say, because it wasn't very clear, is you would like me to explain what a typical QHHT session looks like. Okay, got it. So, and I apologize. Do you hear me well?
Yeah.
You do. Okay. Oops, hold on. I clicked you away here. All right. So typically, even before a client comes to me, I connect with them prior to a session, and I usually send them a couple of pointers or things to kind of keep in mind prior to coming to their session. One of the main things that I ask is that when a client comes to a session, they prepare a list of questions that they would like to ask their higher self during the session. And that list can be as short or as long as it needs to be for that specific person. I've had clients with 1 or 2 questions, and I've had clients with 20 questions. But it's very important that a person takes the time prior to the session to sit down and put in writing their thoughts and their questions that they would like to have addressed during the session. Because this is a big part of the QHHT experience. And also part of these questions may be physical ailments that they would like to have addressed, physical or emotional ailments. And they can range it's so different for every client, but they can range anywhere from annoying habits to chronic diseases and illnesses to mental or psychological trauma that people are trying to get over. So another thing that I always advise clients prior to coming to me for a session is to, bless you, is to observe in the days and weeks prior to the session the little serendipities that happen in their lives, because things never happen by chance. Everything happens for a reason, and usually dreams, like I ask clients to observe their dreams before they coming to me for a session, because things just start surfacing up for them that they might have not been aware of prior to expressing interest in QHHT. So after, so during the session, the first thing that we do is we start with an interview, which is, it can be, again, anywhere from an hour to a couple hours. I've even had interviews that take up to 5 hours. It really depends on the individual client and where they are in life and what they need out of their session. My job is to listen, to provide them with a judgment-free environment where they can open up and share their life story, their whatever is burdening them, whatever they're seeking answers to. And during the interview is a very important part of the whole session. This is where we just have a conversation with myself and the client about their life and what has brought them to where they are currently at this point in their life. All of their when I say all, any experiences that they might feel are important to share with me. And also during the interview, I get to know the person, I get to know the client, and I get to understand the story behind their questions that they're wanting to ask during the session. And the better I understand them, the better I can represent them in front of their higher self during the actual QHHT session. So in a sense, I always say to clients, the more I know about you, the better advocate I can be for you during the actual session. So think of me as your representative, as your advocate. And during this initial conversation, I also ask a lot of additional questions just to gain a deeper understanding of the client's background. After the interview comes the actual induction, the actual QHHT session, the part where they're, laying down, and I guide them safely and gently into this deepest state of hypnosis, the theta state, the state right before sleep, which we also call the somnambulistic state. So it starts with an induction, which typically leads to exploring past lives. So the past life regression is the initial part of the session. And a client may experience one, two, or several different past lives, but it's very different for each client. Some may actually experience a previous past life on Earth, or they may go to a past experience from their current life, some maybe a memory that they have buried and don't recall any longer. They may even go to the future. They may go to another parallel life, or even to the spirit side where they're not even in a physical body. So it's really it's quite interesting because it's very different for every client. But your higher self will guide you during that phase of the session to exactly where you need to be at that point, and it will show you exactly what you need to see at this point of your current life. So nothing is by chance, and it's very important. I always try to tell my clients to trust the process, to trust that everything will make sense at the end, and all the puzzle pieces will fall together at the end, even if it doesn't make sense to you at all during the actual session and while you're in trance, because our conscious mind, our logical mind, always tries to intervene, and as you know, our ego mind function is to keep us safe. So it's nothing to ego mind has a very important role in our lives and is not to be disregarded as less important. It's very important because it's responsible for our functioning, for our analytical decisions, for us surviving in this 3D materialistic world. But the ego mind is oftentimes based on fear, because through fear we're kept alert and awake, and we're kept alive. It's responsible for our survival. So oftentimes what happens in a session is that ego mind tries to intervene, analyze, doubt, um, and I like to it's my job as a practitioner to gently guide the client to transition more into the right side of the brain, more into the right mind, the one that is connected to your higher self, and to put the left side of the brain, the ego mind, at ease, and to assure that there's nothing to fear and that it is okay to let go and to stop analyzing, and that it is safe. So again, so after the past life regression portion of the session, I connect I lead the client to a connection with their higher self. And this is the part of the session where all the miracles happen, where the client receives answers to, if not all, a lot of their questions, and where we can also ask for healing. After that part of the session can last anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. I try to keep it under 3 hours, although I've had some sessions that are much longer than that, like yours. We can talk about that later. And then the last part is obviously the coming out of the session. And after the session, I sit down with the client face to face for a short kind of debrief, and we go over the outcome, the answers, or the results of the session, what has come through for them. I make sure that they're fully awake and alert and able to transition into their normal functioning, normal life afterwards. And a lot of times clients will think that they remember the whole session because, like I said, the left side of the brain is often there, the ego mind, and listens and observes, intervenes. But curiously enough, they might remember for a while after the session, for the first hour or two, but then it all kind of dissipates. It's kind of like a dream when you wake up from a dream, and it's super vivid, and you remember at first every detail of it, and you think you're going to remember it because it was so intense and so powerful, and you felt like you were in the dream. But then as life goes on, as you move on with your physical day, you forget about it. And a very similar experience happens through QHHT. You might think, I remember the whole session, I remember everything, but you don't. You start forgetting, and that's why we always record every session, and at the end of the session, the client receives an audio recording, and they can always go back and listen to that recording afterwards, which I encourage clients to do not once but multiple times, because every time you re-listen to your recording, you find out and you discover more information that you might have either forgotten, or you see it from a different angle. You gain new perspective on the information that you have received. And sometimes I go and re-listen, for example, to my old sessions or my clients' old sessions, and it never gets boring. Every time I re-listen to a session, I gain new wisdom and new knowledge from it, and I see things from a different perspective that I had not the previous time. That's why it's very important for a person after their session to listen to that recording. And by doing so, you also stay in that, you tap back into that higher 5D vibration of your higher self. Your body, your physical body, your cells, and your subconscious remember that state, that elevated state of consciousness that they were in during the actual session. Uh, and it's amazing, you know, that's one way um, to keep connecting and to strengthen your connection to your higher self.
Yeah. Every
So,
time that I've had a session, I hope my audio is working better now, but every
yeah,
time I've had a session,
thank
I've
you.
had a huge up leveling in my life somewhere. Or as you said, you know, when I re-listen to my sessions, I will get different clarity, different perspectives, and different things happen kind of in my life from shifting frequencies, from kind of up leveling, you know, my state of consciousness, my state of awareness about my life and my own life circumstances that I've created.
Yeah, I remember from your sessions the difference um, from the version of you before your first session and the version of you before your second session was light years. You were a completely different person. You were glowing. You were empowered. You were. I could tell that your whole life perspective had shifted, and it was beautiful to observe and to watch. And I'm so humbled and honored that I have been able to help you through that um, um, stage of growth and awakening.
Yeah, it's been absolutely amazing. And just to give you guys a little glimpse of some of my story, we can talk a little bit about some of the sessions that I've had just to give you guys a little bit of what a personal experience looks like with signing up to get a QHHT session. So the first go around, I again was not very tapped into the left brain whatsoever. So I kind of went into it with more of like these really big questions. Like I had a lot of, you know, big, if I'm on the right path, you know, like looking at what I wanted to do with the grand scheme of like my life, what, you know, where I was, where was I from? Like, you know, these big, like almost existential questions. A lot of them even, you know, like these big questions about like what's out there and things like that. And so but my during my first session was really when I was doing a lot of healing from my mom too. I will never forget that because that was one of the breaking points to me signing up to look into QHHT, was because at the time I was struggling heavy with my mom having passed. Like it was something that I was carrying with me. You know, I couldn't understand why, you know, that there was all these questions and that surrounding it. And so our first session, I didn't do any kind of past life regression that one. I think a lot of it was my right brain was really interfering, not necessarily interfering, but really present during that one. And so I remember even I started to go somewhere and then my brain almost like stopped myself and I went somewhere else. And so during that first one, I went to a couple of different experiences within this lifetime that I got to look at. And then I also got to ask kind of some questions that I've been wondering about when it came to my physical health, my concussions, and my skin, and especially surrounding my mom, because I think a lot of us, that's one of the biggest pieces of trauma that we carry is like the passing of somebody, passing of a loved one. And so I'll never forget, we had a conversation kind of with my higher self where I got to ask, you know, why did mom leave when she did? And so do you remember exactly that conversation too?
I I don't remember the exact words, but I do recall the conversation, and I know that your mom was your the soul, the spirit of your mom, the essence of your mom came into the session, into the room with us, and you were able to talk with her, weren't you? Or you were able
Yes.
to see her? And
Yes. I
I remember how um, relieving that was for you, like the the feeling of just connecting with her spirit like that helped you, from my perspective, release all that trauma, all that sadness that you had and guilt that you had carried around her loss and her leaving you so early. And I felt like that session, um, although it started, like you said, it was a struggle. Even for me, it was a struggle at the beginning, uh, but it ended up to be an extremely healing session for you. Um, from my experience, from what I experienced, and from what you shared afterwards. But I recall at the beginning, well, if I may share this with your audience, you had chosen to have the session at a hotel. Was it a hotel or
Yeah, it was like an Airbnb because
Airbnb?
yeah.
Trying to get away from your typical environment, so you had booked that Airbnb, and that's where I visited you, because I do that as well. I sometimes I do visit my clients instead of them coming to me, which is more the case recently because we have been moving. We moved twice in the last year. Um, but so I visited you in that Airbnb, and neither of us expected it to be so loud. It was street noise from. It was Friday night, if I recall correctly.
I think it was
There
a
were
Thursday night. It was like a thirsty Thursday, and there were people out.
honking horns and partying outside, and before earlier in the afternoon there was somebody vacuuming in front of the door, and it was like I was bombarded with so much noise. And the number one priority in a QHHT session is to not be disturbed, to have silence and quiet without any external distractions, so that the client can relax and be easier put in that deep state of trance, which that wasn't the case with you. So in addition to that external noise that we were bombarded with, your logical mind was interfering big time, and usually you um, when a person is resistant or scared of the experience or of the unknown, they might not go into a past or future life. And I've had that happen with clients who have a very active left brain, a very active logical mind. They, instead of going to a past life, they will go to the past of their current life, which is okay. Nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean that a session won't work. We can work with that as well, and that's what happened with you. You went to a past life, to a past memory of your current life, and even that part I remember. I usually try to keep it to an hour or so. It lasted a few 2 hours or so because and I didn't know that because you were under hypnosis, but you shared that with me afterwards, that you are struggling to your left and your right side of the brain were fighting internally which one to have the say at this moment. So, but you mastered that challenge wonderfully, and um, after a certain while, it became much easier for you, and I could tell that it was getting easier for you as the session went on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that first session, I do feel like it was a lot of like my left and right brain kind of almost like bickering, like an old married couple. It was
Yeah.
like my right brain would speak, and then my left brain would be there, like questioning everything that my right brain just said, like, but is it really though? And just would start interfering. But it's funny because then I feel like I used to judge my ego so much and judge even myself, my left brain. So when that would happen, I was kind of like trying to shove it. Like I was like, go away, left brain, go away, ego. But when we did the second and third sessions, I felt a huge difference, especially from the first to the second session. that second session, I went into it with the intention to be more kind to myself and to my left brain. And so when we had that second session, which was much more quiet because we did it we did it there in St. Louis,
Yeah.
but during that second session, I remember my right brain, speaking and us having that session. And instead of me kind of trying to push away that left brain, I was like, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being present here, because I know I wouldn't be able to remember all of this that's happening if my left brain wasn't present. I know that my left brain is there to keep me safe. And so instead of kind of judging it and pushing it away, I was like, thank you. And it really did quiet it so much more from that, than when we judge it, which is a great,
Yeah.
life parallel in general.
Yeah. And actually having your left brain present during a QHHT session can be a quite beneficial, can be quite beneficial for you. Um, Although it might feel like a struggle at the beginning, um, having that analytical side of your brain be there and be present during the conversation with your higher self and observe, um, it is very helpful because um, when your higher self gives you an answer to one of your questions, um, or gives you advice, usually it's information. Usually it's information that the left side of the brain would have never, your ego mind would have never come up with. And that's how you know that that information is valid, because not only does it, not only is it information that you in your awake state would have never thought of to say, but it also comes from your mouth. It's not me putting the words in your mouth. You are the one telling yourself and answering yourself the questions that you have, which which is a huge validation for most people. And when you have that analytical side of the brain present, it is able, while the session is going, to absorb, to hear and to learn and absorb the answers and the lessons. Um, and sometimes when the analytical mind, when it does that during the session, it is much easier to proceed with healing. For example, a big part of most sessions for most clients is healing. They come in. Some clients come with a bunch of questions because they're seeking answers. Other clients come because they have physical ailments that they would like to heal from. Well, it's not always um, whether a client receives healing or not depends entirely, is entirely up to them. Depends entirely on them. And what I mean by that is, um, for example, when I am in a session and connect to the higher self, um, I don't automatically ask, can this and this be healed? Can this condition or this ailment be healed? My first job is to ask, why does the client have this? What is the meaning behind it? What is the lesson behind it? Because as we know, and actually Dolores Cannon's daughter, Julia Cannon, has written a wonderful book on this topic called Soul Speak. It's almost like a dictionary that connects every physical ailment with a lesson or an emotional state that needs to be resolved in order to resolve and eliminate that ache or that ailment. Um, our bodies are perfect, are like mechanisms for um, delivering messages from our higher self in the shape of aches and ailments. And people listening to this might think, well, that's not fair. Why does an ache have to be a message? Well, because we were born into this 3D reality with a veil in front of our eyes, completely detached from source consciousness and from our higher selves, not even knowing and not even being taught that that higher, eternal, ever knowing part of us exists. Um, and the only way for that part of us, until we learn to connect with it, the only way for it to deliver messages to us is through our bodies. Um, so, um, so when a person wants to be healed of a specific condition during a session, my first intention is to ask, what does that illness or condition mean? And what is the lesson for that person behind that ailment? And I want the higher self to give me a very specific, detailed answer, and I want to make sure that the client has it on their recording, because only after the lesson is heard and processed and understood can the physical healing of the condition be given. Does that make sense?
Mm.
And when your left brain, your analytical brain, is present during that session and observe that conversation and can hear firsthand from the right side of the brain, from your higher self, the lesson behind it, it can, the learning and the transmutation can happen right there at the spot, which accelerates the healing. The healing can be given right there and then. And but if a client does not has not yet heard or understood their lesson, or for some reason they're refusing to change whatever the necessary change is, then it's harder for the higher self will refuse healing for that individual. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that has been, I think, my experience as well, just with some of the ailments, the physical ailments and stuff that we talked about during my sessions. And I now reference that book, Soul Speak, all the time. I absolutely adore that book. It's so funny. I love just how you come armed in your QHHT sessions with your notebook and with your Soul Speak book. And it makes my heart so happy, because I'm like, there she is with just like those bare basics. And that's all you need for this amazing transformational healing experience that gives you a whole different idea of what health is and what your body is really trying to tell you. So I love that explanation of it. And speaking of, something came up for me while you were talking earlier too, about how there is so much validation from it being that you're the one asking the questions and you're the one that's answering. And so one of the things that happened in our last QHHT session together was you had asked a question that I didn't even know about, that I had never even heard of before, talking about with Dolores Cannon's video about the waves of volunteers. And so during this last session that we had together, Stella asked my higher self which wave of volunteers that I was, and I said the second wave.
And you
And
had no idea what you're
I had
talking
no
about.
idea what the waves were. Like physical Callie had no idea what these waves were. And so it's funny because after you said that, actually just this morning before this, I was like, you know what? I'm going to listen to more about these waves. And so incredibly spot on. So true with the first, second, and third wave, generations that you can see. But that's just one of those things that, again, was like a connecting piece that you know, this was something that I didn't know about, but my higher self knew the answer. And that's the same thing goes with our, you know, with our physical body constantly, is that even if we don't feel like we know the answer, our higher self does.
Absolutely, yes, yes. And that's, if that's not validation that that part of you is real and exists, then I don't know what else is. Because, like I said, no matter um, how awakened and aware we are as a human being, there are always things that we don't know that we're seeking the answers to, and our higher self has all those answers. Um, I always say to my clients, like, write a list of questions. Um, I tell them, like, if you could stand in front of God and ask him anything, what would you ask? Write those types of big questions that you've always wondered the answers to, but you never thought you would receive. And and people do, and oftentimes the answers are just mind blowing, and they give me, like, I am, you know, as the practitioner in the session, giving, although I'm not, you know, personally emotionally attached to that person's life, they give me goosebumps, you know, because they're so deep and profound. And I know that there's no way this information is coming from the left side of the brain. And oftentimes, clients, after they come out of a session, we talk about it, or even later down the road after they listen to their recording, um, they're surprised, you know, um, they're shocked by the information and the answers that they receive. And oftentimes it's just so simple. I know, I know how to explain it, but we all go through life with um, part of every person's life are different experiences, oftentimes traumatic experiences. Each one of us has experienced some kind of loss, some kind of illness, some kind of traumatic experience that happened in our childhood or in our past lives. We all carry all this baggage around with us, and we wonder why. Why did this happen to me? Why did I have to suffer so much? And these are some of the questions that I address in QHHT sessions with my clients. And the answers are so profound and simple. They're oftentimes, clients are oftentimes told, because you needed to learn to forgive, or you needed to learn unconditional love, or most often these traumatic experiences have the purpose of teaching us forgiveness. Um, Forgiveness is the step to a higher 5D consciousness. You can't get there without forgiving, and you cannot heal without forgiving um, the people in your life that have wronged you, or they think that you think they have wronged you. Yeah. And until you do, your body is going to show you in some shape or form that there is still inner work to be done, to heal and to forgive. And that inner turmoil will manifest itself in ailments, aches, discomfort, and so on. So, understanding that each one of those physical symptoms, or even random, you know, serendipities occurring in your life, they're all messages, and understanding how to read them or what they mean, is just opens up a whole new universe of experiences
Yeah,
and awareness.
absolutely. I think that's the biggest thing is it's awareness so that we aren't the victims of our life circumstances, but rather we get to learn from them. And it almost has shifted, my entire mentality on when physical things happen in my body. I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I'm open to listening, like what it is that I, am needing to work on so that I am getting past that emotion, that trauma, if there's something still lingering, like you said, like unforgiveness is a huge one. Unforgiveness towards others, unforgiveness towards myself, or any kind of pent up, anger, grief, all of those emotions we know store on a physical level. So this is just one of those amazing tools that can help up level your awareness of yourself and then create just so much more clarity and room in your life for beautiful new opportunities and experiences too.
Absolutely, yes. And it's very important to not judge um, the pain, for example, or or like you said earlier, to feel victim to it, but to simply understand that it's nothing more than a message. And once you decipher the message and you're willing to do the inner work to transmute whatever negative energy is causing that pain, um, it will naturally dissipate and go away. I mean, that's how you hear about all these spontaneous remissions of, for example, cancer patients. By the way, cancer is one of the things that Dolores and Julia Cannon talk a lot about. And Julia talks about that in her sessions, in her book as well. Cancer is directly related to the feeling of anger. So if you're, and where in your body the cancer is, will help you determine um, what part of it in your life are you angry towards? Is it, um, and it can be anything. It can be angry at life, at a person, even at yourself, even at your illness, or and figuring that out and admitting to yourself your feelings and being willing to work on them, to transform them, to release them, and transmute them from anger and negative low vibration to love. That's the work that needs to be done to release the cancerous cells. And yeah, because as you know, every emotion, um, you probably have heard of the emotional scale. So every human emotion is somewhere on this scale of emotions and has a different frequency. And feelings that drag you down, that depress you, make you sad, make you angry, guilty, jealous, those are feelings of very low vibration. And they will naturally put you in a lower state of consciousness. So being aware of those and understanding, not judging them, because we all have good and bad days, but understanding why they're there and being willing to work on transmuting them into higher vibrational feelings of compassion, forgiveness, peace, love, acceptance, um, is very important, to, I lost my thought. It's the work that we try to do, and that's part of what happens during the QHHT session is understanding the feelings and learning to transmute them.
Mm, I love that. So, before we sign off of here, is there anything else that you have thought of, or anything else that you want to say about QHHT?
Wow. Well, there's so much more that we haven't even talked about. I feel like we've barely touched the bottom of it. No, not the bottom, the top of it. How do you say?
Yeah, we've just scratched the surface, just barely.
Surface, that's what I mean. Yeah. Um, I guess in conclusion, I'd like to make people aware that this beautiful, powerful modality of QHHT, quantum healing hypnosis, exists, and that it is available out there for anybody who is interested in experiencing it. There are QHHT practitioners in almost every city. You can probably, like Kallie did, go online on the QHHTofficial.com website and find a practitioner in your area. And usually the practitioner, the practitioner that is meant for you, that you're meant to have a session with, and that you will connect the best with, will be the one that you're naturally automatically guided to. So when the client comes to me, like in this case, Kallie came to me, I know that they have been sent to me by their higher self, because again, nothing is random. Nothing is by chance. Everything happens with intent. So yeah, if any of you out there are interested in experiencing this modality, go on the official QHHTofficial.com website, look up all the names, let yourself be naturally guided to the practitioner that speaks to you the most. And if you have the chance to experience this, it can be one of the best days of your life. It's an extremely transformational, life-changing and healing experience. And it truly opens you up to that eternal, all-knowing part of yourself, and teaches you how to connect to it, not only in a QHHT session, but also afterwards in your day-to-day life, through meditation and whatever your spiritual practice is. So this technique has done miracles for people all over the world, and it's very powerful. And since I personally discovered QHHT and have had a chance to work with so many clients, and even in my own personal sessions, honestly, every time I'm in a session, I feel like I'm in the presence of God. It was extremely powerful during my very first session, but the feeling still remains. It's incredible. So I highly recommend it to everybody listening.
It absolutely is. So thank you again for sharing this with everyone, and we'll cross our fingers and maybe get another one of these in the books one of these days, where we can go a little deeper on some of the QHHT fun parts that we didn't get to touch on yet today. So
Absolutely. And if you or any of your viewers or clients have any more questions, feel free to share my way. I'll be happy to elaborate.
yeah, absolutely. What's the best way to get in contact with you, as far as if anybody has any questions, wants to follow up with you, or potentially is even in your area and wants to get a session?
Yeah, if somebody's down here in Texas, they're always welcome to call me or send me an email. Right now, as I said, I'm still in transition and my website is still in the works. But they can either call me or email me. My email is QHHT QHHT at stellardust.net. Stellar,
Perfect.
STELLAR, dust, DUST.net.
Perfect. And I will put that in the show notes, and I will put any other kind of little tidbits that we think that you guys might get from this session as well, so you guys can dig a little deeper into QHHT. So thank you again, and so much love to you, Stella. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me here. It's always such a delight and pleasure to talk to you. And I look forward to our next session together.
Me too. Me too. All right. Logging
Okay.
off now, everyone. God bless you.
Bye bye.